I'm sure you all remember at the release of LostArk how there were a massive amount of tier lists going around, especially on YouTube. And that was for two reasons. Number one, people wanted to know what classes were strong. Like, obviously, you start a new game, you don't want to pick the worst class. You want to make sure that the class that you're going to pick is a good class, right? And tier lists should help you with that decision. But number two, mostly, it was just easy clicks. It was really easy clicks. I even had my own tier list. I released it like a few months before release and it got a lot of clicks, but I took it down afterwards because I'm not a fan of tier lists. And that has multiple reasons. Number one, the most important one is that tier lists need context. What is this tier list actually about? In what scenario are we putting the classes? How are we rating these classes? Because depending on the context, the tier list might change drastically. Like a proc tier list is different from a speedrun tier list. A farm tier list is different from a, I don't know, random tier list, synergy tier list. Like they all are going to be different. And it's really important to always have a context. That's why you can never really have one big tier list that will sum up everything at once, basically. So that was my second reason. My last reason is because the community often is influenced in many ways by tier lists, especially if they are received as accurate or if they are, just actually a little bit on point with what they offer, and people jump to conclusions really quickly. And if a class is at the bottom of the tier list, this class is bad, I don't want it in my party. Now, I haven't specifically seen that in LostArk, but I've seen it in other MMOs happen that I played where certain classes would not get into parties because they were considered really bad, even though the difference was never so significant that it actually would matter because, again, the most important skill is your hands that you bring. Now, anyway, that was a long intro, but I have a tier list that I actually want to present to you. This tier list has been posted on Inven, which we know is the Korean Reddit, basically, right? And it also hasn't been posted on Reddit. It got linked to me. And I think I also seen it on Twitter somewhere. I've seen other streamers talk about it. So I think in general, this tier list was received okay-ish. It wasn't really received negatively, but it actually got a decent chunk of upvotes on Inven, which doesn't usually happen with tier lists. And also, I went through the comments, I checked the thread, we will look at that later, but it seems a lot of people think this is okay and accurate. So I thought, hey, I'm going to share this with you guys because we're also currently on the same patch in terms of balance as the Korean servers. Of course, we're missing a lot of stuff like higher gear and more stats and whatnot, which can change a little bit for our version. But overall, this tier list seems pretty okay. So I want to go through the classes. Of course, I don't play them all. I did play some of them on Russia already. There's also classes we don't have, obviously. And in general, I just want to give my opinion on this tier list, on the class ranking. And just one thing before we start, again, take this please with a grain of salt. If your class is bottom tier, it doesn't actually mean it's necessarily really bad or something like that. So let's start with this. Here is a translated version, right, that I sneaked from Reddit here. Like this is the original picture we had. There's a translated version here at the left where the tiers are translated, and we also have the original Inven posted. I'll go over later. First off, we have, I don't know if the rankings in the tiers matter. Like if we're saying, okay, Empress Grace is the strongest class currently in the game or Search is the weakest in this tier. That's something I'm not aware of, so we're just going to pretend that's not a thing. But let's start now after so much talking. On the first place, we have the Empress Grace here, the Arcana spec, which has been lately receiving a lot of love from Smilegate, and I think this is pretty accurate. I play with someone that has an Arcana at pretty high item level, and they always do really insane damage. Their gear is not out of the world, their gear is pretty good, but every time, no matter what character I bring to our clan raid, this guy just fucking massively pumps, and I can see Empress Grace being really strong if the player behind has, of course, appropriate hands to play it. Then we have the Igniter spec for Sorceress. Yeah, it was known that Igniter has been really strong for a long time. This is because of the burst window they have. They can just dump so much damage in such a short amount of time. And we all know that Legion raids often have certain windows where you want to pump, where you want to do big damage. And that's where Igniter really shines and can bring the most to the table. Igniter overall always has been a strong spec and probably will also remain a strong spec for a while unless it gets hit with some nerfs. Next one, we have the Deathblow Striker, also known to be really strong due to the cards and just due to how the Striker scales with spec and everything. Deathblow has been really strong already for a while. No nerfs also in the latest patches or anything, so Smugget probably assumes it's fine. Deathblow takes a lot of dedication. It's very expensive to gear, just like the other classes in this tier mostly. And in general, this class has, especially if you play the 3-spender build, a lot of uptime. You never stop doing damage, basically. We need a bit more spec in our version to make the 3-spender build really work. I play it, but it's a bit scuffed here and there, but this class really with a more spec and a bit more crit from bracelets will even excel more due to keen blunt weapon and whatnot. So definitely understandable. Deathblow Striker. On top of that, the card set again is very strong. Then we have Rage Hammer. Yes, Rage Hammer Destroyer. There was some people that say this class doesn't belong into S tier. That's not correct. And I firmly disagree with that. Rage Hammer offers exactly what other classes offer in this tier, extremely high burst. Rage Hammer Destroyer has insane numbers. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I want to just give you a glimpse into this. This is what I hit in a, of course, perfect synergy scenario. I had a Spec Bard, I had the Darknet, the Atropine, and I hit 257 million. Now, my Destroyer is not even crazy geared. He has a 23 weapon, he's 1505 in this video. I have level 7 gems. It was not even that it's like a whale level of gear or something. It was just decently geared. And this is a lot of damage in one single cooldown. Now, on top of that, you have the Seismic Hammer that follows this up, which can also hit for over 100 million. So you do around 300 or more in a window of 4 seconds, which is a lot of damage. So Rage Hammer Destroyer in S tier deserved, in my opinion. Whoever says it's not, well, maybe you should try it yourself. I know there was a tier list done not too long ago where Rage Hammer was ranked in B tier, and well, you're wrong. That's it. In my opinion, you were wrong. Anyway, we have Greater Summoner. I don't have to comment on Summoner. The class is not out. I have never played it, so I'm gonna not comment on this. I don't know anything about it. Then we have Barrage Enhancement. Now, as we all know, Artillery's got a big rework that we finally also got with the Reaper patch, I believe it was. And now it seems that Barrage Enhancement is crazy strong. Wheelchair Artillery's, like I've seen videos of some clown buses happening, and it just massively pumps. Like, it is insane. This is really like, yeah, it seems to me that this is actually accurate just from what I've seen in those videos, that the Barrage Enhancement Artillerist actually is really slapping it. And lastly, of course, we cannot have these burst classes without having Search in there. Search Blade, just too strong, too good. Honestly, just overall a really good spec. I probably should have made one at some point. I feel like it because I think I might enjoy it, but you can hit really high numbers. There was a clip of someone hitting 228 millions in Kungalanium, which is not even weak to light, right? So it's actually like it can go higher by much more probably. Like that's an insane number. Search Blade really strong. Now, a quick comment on this first tier is that all of these classes are, I don't know about Summoner, so I'm going to exclude it from this comment, is that they are very high bursty. The Empress Grace is also not crazy bursty, but all the others here with Barrage, with Surge, the Rage Hammer Ignite, they're all very burst-oriented classes. And we know burst classes excel in Legion rates due to the fact that you will have some downtime and you will profit from that downtime. Sustained DPS classes will never reach this ceiling just due to the fact that they cannot get off their sustained DPS. Now, before I continue, I want to also quickly go over the tiers that we have. They use Peacemaker, by the way, the Gunslinger Peacemaker as the basically benchmark. This is how a class should be balanced. It's the most balanced class. Everything above that is better. Everything below that is a bit weaker, as you also can see what the comments are from the translated Reddit post. Then we have the next tier, not as strong as above, but still strong. And we're now going to, of course, I'm going to go a bit quicker because I just want to comment mostly on the really OP classes in this post. So Enhanced Weapon Deadeye, very strong. I agree with that. It's just very hard to play. So you will not see as many good performing Deadeyes because the class is simply super hard to play. But I do agree with this placement, absolutely. Then we have Order of the Emperor, which is surprising to me. I didn't expect Order of the Emperor Kana to be so high up there because I played on Russia. It was really bad back then, but I know they changed a lot. That was looking on with Arcana, so maybe I'm not up to date anymore. And this is very possible because of the changes. I mean, Empress Grace is up there. And don't forget, Arcana is also Giga Squishy class, so there needs to be a reward from being so squishy. Then we have the 2 Aeromancer engravings. Not going to comment on them. Happy to see that they're doing well. Of course, when it comes to our version, I hope this will stay the same. Then we have the 2 Sophist engravings next to each other, which is surprising because one is more swiftness oriented and the other one more spec oriented with energy overflow versus robust spirit. I always thought robust would be a bit stronger, but in this series they're rated evenly. I also know that energy overflow isn't too crazy to gear in terms of pricing, so if you're looking for a strong class that you just want to, you know, pump on, energy overflow might be the way to go. And yeah, it's a very spammy class. I'm surprised at this because most secondary specs are on the C tier. I'm gonna say C tier here, but yeah, energy overflow performing as well as robust spirit. Sophie is overall not so popular, but yeah, very strong. Then we have the esoteric skill enhancement for War Dancer. We all know War Dancer has always been strong, always will remain strong. This is probably not even taking into account the whole synergies it brings. I think this whole tier list is basically without synergies because otherwise we had definitely some different picture here. So esoteric skill, high damage plus good synergy. Then we have the shock training scrapper even after the nerfs. The nerfs happened not long ago on our version. They were introduced a few months back on Korea. Still performing very good. This is true. I also have a shock training scrapper and 4x3+1. Very strong, big numbers. Honestly, I agree with this. Also, this rating on the shock scrapper. This class, by the way, in my opinion, is super easy to play. Brain dead. Like, honestly, if you want a brain dead class that pumps massively, shock scrapper is the way to go. And then lastly, now the summon engraving. Again, not going to comment on it since I don't know anything about it. Then we have the Peacemaker, of course, which is our balance. That's they say, okay, Peacemaker is the balance for every class, basically. Now we have here then the next one, weaker than above classes. Now, the classes in this tier probably aren't bad necessarily. I wouldn't consider them like in any form way bad. They just probably mean, hey, they could use some love maybe, but you always need to have a bit of imbalance in every game so that people are encouraged to maybe like play a different class or try a different class once they get buffed. So for this list, we're also going to go a bit quicker. We have the Perfect Suppression Shadow Hunter, surprisingly also not as strong as people thought it would be. I always thought it would pump much more. Then you have the Mayhem Zerg, which since the nerfs has fallen off a little bit, still of course very good and very playable. Then we have Machinist Arthenian Skill. Of course, I also play an Arthenian Skill Machinist. Very cheap to gear, by the way, if you're interested in a cheap class. Still pumps good damage, in my opinion. I have lots of fun with it. Very strong and very cool to play. Esoteric Flurry Striker, the weaker brother of the Deathblow. I personally don't play this. I don't have any interest in playing it because it just feels like a weaker version of Deathblow since you also use similar skills actually as far as I know. So no reason to play that, in my opinion at least. Of course, if you play it and you enjoy it, that's good for you. Then we have Gravity Training Destroyer. Gravity Training Destroyer got buffed recently. It still has problems. And the problem is just the way Gravity Training works. You can barely ever get the full uptime on your identity on any boss. And it needs to be changed, in my opinion, a little bit to keep the attack speed that you're stacking up, for example, or other things to make Gravity Training actually more viable. Very fun to play, though. If you want to play a relaxed class that doesn't require too much brain power, Gravity Training is a way to go. Second, Scrapper engraving, the Taijutsu engravings. Swiftness, crit-oriented class here. No surprise, not using spec. Very strong, of course, and very quick if you like to play like very fast-oriented class. Taijutsu, very strong also. Then we have the Legacy Evolution from the Scout, of course, also, or the Machinist. Also, still here and very strong, and as we know, it's more cheaper because, you know, you only need one gem to actually pump out damage. Of course, I expect this to be lower. I'm surprised it is even with other classes because the transform classes fall off later on because of tripods and gems and whatnot, and you cannot pump as much into them. Then we have the two Glavier engravings performing evenly, which is very true. I've heard that both are good. Of course, Pinnacle is the more commonly used as far as I know. Control also more of an off-meta build, but apparently also still performs really good. Now, this is a bit of a surprise to me, but it is what it is. Time to Hunt Gunslinger is just Yeah, I mean, I play it on one of my alts. It's not that crazy in my opinion. They buffed it recently, which puts it into this tier in my opinion, because before that it was considered pretty bad. Then we have the two Reaper specs here, the Thursday and the Moon, or Lunar, whatever it is called. And it's a bit surprising to see Reaper so low. I thought it was actually pumping more damage, so I'm a bit questioning this placement, if this is really accurate. Is this because it is hard to play? Is this because it is squishy? I don't know. Maybe this is just pure damage, but the positioning is pretty low, maybe for a reason. Maybe my opinion was wrong on that. I'm just surprised to see it here, both of them. Then we have First Intention War Dancer. Again, also still performing decently for a more, I think, swiftness-orientated class. Then we have Reflux Sorceress, swiftness crit-oriented again. The off-meta spec here still performing well, of course, not a problem. Firepower enhancement. After the changes now, Firepower is now the smaller brother of the two engravings. I know before that Artillerist always was Firepower enhancement and the other one was pretty useless, but they changed it and now this is the off-meta engraving. And lastly, we have Remaining Energy, of course, here from the Blade. Still a very good, actually very good to play. Now the question here is, what's weird here to me is that this is a spec-oriented engraving and it still is so low, again, just like the Reaper, because most here are crit swiftness oriented besides a few one, which means that the ceiling just isn't that high. Remaining Energy also isn't so bursty, so that's probably the other explanation for that. Then we have the next tier, which has issues. Class engraving identity is defective. Demonic Impulse as the first one here. I mean, it's apparently lower than Legacy from the Machinist, which is of course interesting, but Demonic Impulse is very low in the tier. Still, of course, fine to play. I have one at 14-15 and I'm just generally every time surprised by how much damage that class does. I have one level 7 gem and I always am MVP in this clue and I'm just like, how is this possible? Anyway, then we have both of the Hawkeye or Sharpshooter engravings, the Loyal Companion and Death Strike. I'm sad to see a class having two specs in the lower tier. Maybe this just means that the class needs that they need some changes, honestly, in their engraving, possibly. But overall, Loyal Companion, Death Strike, I think this is the price that you have to pay if you're a pure range class that barely ever has to go into melee range and that has it very safe, unlike Gunslinger, for example. Either this is intended or this is just something that they need a bit of love, both of them. I would say, of course, Death Strike should perform better, in my opinion. It's a spec-oriented, burst-oriented build, so I think the numbers should be tweaked there a little bit. Then we have Berserker's Technique here. Also, even after the buffs, not performing that well, maybe needs to see some changes. I don't play it a lot. I don't know exactly how it works, so don't really want to comment on it. And lastly, the Lone Knight, my main's engraving. Yes, my main is only in the lower tier here. I don't think I'm not sad about this. I was totally aware that Lone Knight, of course, or in general Gunlancer, has lower damage, and that's okay. We offer so much utility synergy that this is not important to me. I have fun playing it. It has big numbers, big fan of it. Of course, it's not as big as like the Destroyer that I play, but it's still super fun to play. And of course, again, the utility we bring. And then we have the tier that's called Why Would You Play This? Now, this is, of course, very interesting, that tier. We have the Pistolier Handgunner. Yeah, I mean, Handgunner, I played it on Russia and it was literally just spam build and I don't know. It's a very weird build. It doesn't feel challenging at all. I understand if it doesn't do damage because there's no positionals, full range, of course, also. I think that's, again, the price you have to pay if you're a full range class, kind of, with no positionals whatsoever. Then we have the Combat Readiness Blue Gun Lancer. This was, of course, I knew this, that blue would do less damage than red. That is clear since the Legion raids made more mechanics and everything. But here, apparently, Blue Gun Lancer also, why would you play this? Now, I think Blue Gun Lancer is, of course, okay to play. Again, the synergy and utility you bring still puts it into a better spot than other classes, in my opinion, at least. And then we have the 3 DPS engravings for the supports. So whatever, I said just from the get-go, don't play DPS Paladin, don't play anything that's deep, like, you know, just play it as a support and be done with it. So that was the whole tier list. This got really long, which is not an issue, but I wanted to also just look at the Inven comments really quickly. Like the Inven list here again, it has 45,000 views. I will also link these in the description below. and it has 263 comments, and it got 179 upvotes, right? This is the same tier list we just looked at. And if you look at the comments, there are actually like, here is like, it's accurate, you know, I don't know what this is. This is of course translated via Google Translate. And there's of course a lot of talk, but I feel like there are a lot of comments that talk about how this is okay. There you go. This is perfect, quite right. You know, like there are a lot of comments that actually say this looks pretty good. Now, the question really is this actually true? So is this actually like, are people like doing DPS meters or something like that to actually know if this is correct? Or is this really just like more common perception in a way? Because of course, if if someone says, hey, this class is really good, next person says the class is really good, and so on and so on and so on, it becomes a perception of the community that the class is really strong that might not actually be strong or something, right? But yeah, I just wanted to share this playlist with you. Tier list. I also wanted to give you my opinion on everything, which I did. Like I said, I feel like these classes are actually really strong. This is also due to the fact that they utilize spec a lot, right? Don't forget, spec always has a higher ceiling because a crit-oriented class can only crit, but cannot increase their damage, while a spec class can increase their damage and crit at the same time. Spec will always be superior. These classes are spec-oriented, even a Rage Hammer. Some of you might say, but folks, Rage Hammer is crit-oriented. Yes, it is, obviously. You want to crit. But spec gives the Rage Hammer insane damage. Like my spec is like 800 and my skills are increased by like 70-80% damage or something, which is insane if you think about it. So all these classes here are spec oriented. And here I think most of them too, like I know Enhanced Weapon goes spec, Order of the Emperor is more swiftness oriented as far as I remember. Could be wrong though, so don't quote me on that. Energy Overflow isn't. But again, Shock here as a Terry Seal Enhancement and Robust Spirit also spec classes. So we can see the spec classes and not transform classes are performing the best. And then Remaining Energy down here and the Moon Sound down here, which is a bit interesting. But overall, this tier list feels kind of accurate to me personally, is what I want to say. Now, of course, more importantly, I want to know how you guys feel about this tier list. What is your opinion on it? Do you agree with this? Do you disagree with this? Do you think what I said is wrong? Because I want to know how the community perceives this tier list. I want to know if you think this is a good tier list, if this is another just a, I don't know, whatever to get clicks tier list. You know, I want to know what your opinion on this is. Like I said, I personally think this is kind of accurate. I was surprised at a few placements. But overall, it seems fine to me, right? This could be also a bit different here now version because of the bracelet that we're still missing, but it's coming soon. Belshazzar very, very soon. And yeah, that's just important to me to know how you guys think about a tier list, because a tier list is very important. Like I said earlier, it can create waves in the community. It can, make the community change their perception on certain things. Of course, it can also lock out certain classes out of Party Finder, which is exactly what I don't want. Still, I made a video about this because, well, you gotta make videos, you gotta milk content where it is, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, again, let me know in the comments, guys, how you feel about this tier list, if you think it's good or bad. And I think that was it for today. A lot of talking for just the tier list, and I hope you guys, of course, liked the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. You can also follow me on Twitter, where I post a lot of memes. I post short videos. I also announce that when I go live, you can also join Discord. You can also then get an announcement when I go live on Twitch, because I stream on Twitch at least 4 days a week, if not more, depending on how I'm feeling and my mood. And that was it for today, though. Again, wishing you, as always, an amazing rest of your day, wherever you live.